Alright, shut up! Alright, we're gonna watch a video that talks about the problem with Endwalker. I don't expect this to say much new, but it's good to see people speaking up about it, because this expansion sucks, let's be fucking honest with you. Let's be honest. This expansion is bad. So, yeah, anyway, let's go.
Hello. With this video, I wanted to take the opportunity to talk about Endwalker. And the reason for that is because if you're watching this now, Criterion Dungeons are just around the corner next week. If you're watching this in the future, maybe it will provide some insight into if I was right or wrong. Either way, I want to talk about Endwalker and its problem. The problem people have with Endwalker, the problem I have with Endwalker. Now, I am open to criticism. If you do not agree with what I say, you can easily dispute.
Yeah, like, as I always say, like, if you're enjoying Endwalker, enjoy Endwalker. I enjoy Endwalker because I enjoy playing the fucking game. But that does not make it a good expansion. And I think he's gonna hit a lot of points that I already hit, like, every fucking day. Well, not every day, but, you know. You get it. Anyway.
That in the comments below.
No one is saying you can't enjoy it.
I'm not saying my way is the right way or my word is gospel, because it isn't. I'm just one person with an opinion, and that is it. Even if I'm a content creator or not, my opinion does not hold any more weight than anyone else who plays the game. Either way, I did want to share my opinion on Endwalker and why I think it has a problem and what its problems are. So the first problem that I have with Endwalker is the oversimplification of jobs and the meta as a whole, and how that all kind of works. So I'd like to begin that healers are definitely a problem to play. I can't see myself playing a healer because to me it is so jarringly boring to play a healer as they currently are. I don't mind playing healers when I have them geared up and I'm doing anything outside of Savage content. Sometimes I will even do Savage content as a healer once I have my healers fully geared up. But even then, I don't find it that engaging. It's really not. You're doing most of your healings through OGCDs, and for the better half of a fight, you're just spamming the same button over and over again. This is a pretty big design flaw in my opinion, and it's kind of just been left alone since kind of Shadowbringers. And it's only gotten worse. It's only gotten more jarringly bad and boring as they've left this issue to just continue to bake.
So, like, my perspective, just in general, is that as a streamer and as someone who likes to talk to his chat, simplifying jobs isn't the end of the world because it allows me to, like, not have to focus. You know, this is quite a niche perspective to have. And it's also true that simplifying jobs increases accessibility to the game. However, this is FFXIV, right? Put the pitchforks away, chat. I'm still talking, right? This is FFXIV. This is an MMO that does not ever force you to get good until, like, Savage. So the problem is, it doesn't matter how simple you make the jobs, people are always gonna be bad. You can simplify healer DPS rotations to one button. They will not press that button. We've seen that. We saw that in the last party just fucking now. I don't see the point in oversimplifying jobs too much and making everything feel the same if it's providing no benefit to the game. It just really doesn't feel like it is. It's just burning people out who want to optimize more. And those that don't give a fuck just aren't even playing correctly. Like, it just kind of sucks. And for healers specifically, like, okay, I'm no healer expert, obviously. So feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but when you can just spreadsheet every fight and press the exact same buttons every time, outside of PF, this does not include PF. Like, I don't think that's good design either. This fight needs to have more reactive stuff to it. Sorry, this game, sorry. There needs to be more reactive healing. Which PF does provide, because people are bad. But like in a static, you can just optimize a healer rotation, and then you are just pressing the same thing every single pull. Like, and that, like, that's not great. This game is too proactive in design. Things don't change enough. I don't mind simplifying jobs because of, like, my job specifically. But for so many others, it's a serious problem. And I agree with them. I'm not happy with it either. Stormblood job design was still better. Healers had rotations. Tanks had to control aggro. DPS had to also control their aggro in a different way. There was more components to any raid you went into.
So I do feel like healing does need to change. The problem is, how do you change healing? With the way this game works, it's kind of hard to change how healing actually works.
True,
Personally,
exactly.
I wouldn't
That's
ask
what
for
I
too
mean.
much, just maybe a bit more of an engaging rotation, similar to how tanks rotations are. They're not too difficult, but they are somewhat complex, and you do...
Okay, you know, I wouldn't agree with making them like that, because like, if you've seen how much like Gunbreaker and Dark Knight have to weave, for example, like, I wouldn't recommend that. But I think, like, again, just go back to Stormblood, man. 2 dots to keep up, an extra button to press, like Shadow Flare, like, just anything. They can't change it without alienating the people that got used to it being too easy. Well, this is the other problem, right? They can't go back in the other direction. They will just lose people because people are fucking lazy and don't want to learn. Because they don't even learn it as it is now. Like, they are designing themselves into a corner. And it's going to get worse. This MMO will not permanently suffer from it. Because even if, like, an extreme scenario happened where all the raiders left, they'd still survive off of all the casuals. And then they'd save resource by not making raids. So, you know, that's quite a doomsday scenario. But I genuinely believe they would get by without making raid content. I don't think that's ever going to happen, but they are going to start losing people if something doesn't change. You know, I know that's very that's very doomer and very extreme, but at this point, I can see it happening.
Need to kind of have a know-how of what buttons you're pressing, which also leads me on to the tanks. I do think the tanks are also a bit of an issue as well, because tanks all play very much the same. You kind of have to have a little know-how about
DPS
how each
with
tank
cooldowns.
plays, but if you played Warrior, you can play Dark Knight. If you've played Gunbreaker, you can play Paladin, and vice versa. Honestly, if you just have a little bit of know-how on how these jobs work and function, you're going to be able to play these jobs quite easily. Just press your buttons, press your cooldowns, and do things that make sense. Maybe look up a little bit, but otherwise, tanks are extremely easy to play and pick up, and they're very similar to one another as well. The identity the tanks have between each other is pretty bad. It's not great, and it does need some changing, hopefully in 7.0. I'm not asking for changes right now, because I know that changes will not happen that drastic right now, but I do think that's an issue, and those two issues are worth pointing out. But say, for instance, I was to play a melee DPS, so I was to play a monk. Maybe I got really good at...
So, like, the thing with tanks is it's also a fight design problem, same as healers. Like, when a tank is made to just fucking stand there like a fucking lemon, pressing a cooldown every so often. Boss never moves anymore. Boss always goes mid. Like, the skill of tanking is taken away. We've gone over this a billion fucking times since at least Abyssos, if not earlier. Like, this has been a problem since... Honestly, Eden's Promise, actually. But at least back then it was just a warning sign rather than an actual reality. But yeah, part of the problem with like supports in general is just like formulaic fight design. And I agree with the identity. I think visual identity they're all pretty good at. Like visually, they're all very different. But the core concepts of like their rotation and cooldowns all very, very similar. And well, you have 2-minute meta to blame for that as well, to be fair. You know, like, this is the thing. Like, it's not one individual thing. Just everything compounds upon each other to create a bigger problem. Changing one thing will not fix the problem. They have to overhaul the entirety of the combat system. The entirety of the class design. Entirety of, like, fight design. And that's never happening. Like, this is a reality we face now. Which is sad. And again, I can find positives as a streamer because I have to think less. Therefore, I can, like, be more entertaining and interactive. But, like, I am one person. There are thousands of raiders out there. And a portion of those suffer because they are fucking bored so fast by this dog shit formula. You know, I find silver linings because I somehow still 25,000 hours later find ways to enjoy this game. But that's not going to be the case for a lot of people.
Monk. Doubtful because I'm terrible at Monk, but maybe I'll just get really good at Monk, and then I wanted to play Samurai. There's a big difference between how these two jobs play. A big difference in play style. If I was to be a Monk, I could not just instantly be an extremely good Samurai. It would require practice and time. So that's kind of not the case with the tanks. But don't worry, there is some criticism to the DPS as well.
At 2 minutes,
and this criticism is mainly the 2-minute burst window.
I already know how to play
the 2-minute burst window. Initial goal was to make it easier for lower end players to just press their buffs and align with everyone else. The problem is this has made more problems than it's actually solved.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure I know what he's gonna say. But also, once again, like, it doesn't matter how simple you make shit. Bad players will always be bad. Some will improve, sure. But a lot of people just don't fucking care. And if you call them out, they'll just report you.
As before, there were 90 and 180 second cooldowns, and the explanation for this, I believe, was that if you just make all the big cooldowns 2 minutes, it means everyone can just press those 2 minutes when they come off cooldown, and it's quite easy to do. Now, I'm not sure where this logic came from, because most players, either way, would have just pressed their 90s and 180s off cooldown anyway, and there are only a very few niche situations where you would hold on to these cooldowns for raid buffs when you knew you wouldn't get an extra usage if you didn't hold on to them anyway. So very niche situations where that would even happen anyway, and it hasn't really helped a hell of a lot in Pathfinder that much.
The other benefit to it was that you had a more dynamic damage profile. Not all your damage was in 2 minutes. Like, he is right that it was, like, somewhat niche. But it did mean that, like, you weren't losing masses amount of damage if you had weakness in 2 minutes, because there was still 3 minutes coming up and stuff. Or you could, you know, if it was rough, or if you were just optimizing, you could move 2 minutes. You could just move cooldowns around to line up later, again, providing you're not going to lose a use. Which you just can't really do anymore. I mean, like, yeah, sure, you can delay 2 minutes, but with how jobs are designed, it's weird delaying 2 minutes in most jobs now. You should still be able to do it. Like, some jobs can easier than others, but some with, like, really strict rotations and stuff, like, it's just needlessly annoying, and it feels bad. Yeah, like, Summoner's a good example. Like, sitting there pressing fucking Ruin 3 just doesn't feel good. Like, it just doesn't.
Anyway, because jobs that fall behind on the 2 minute burst window now get kind of neglected. Now, we still take every job in Pathfinder, and the game's balance is still really good, and I'm not going to deny that. Every job is viable, and you...
Like, every job is viable, yes. The balance is not good, though. I disagree personally. Like when there's like a fucking 2-3k difference between like Fizz ranged and fucking like top dollar like Samurai Black Mage, like it's not okay. And like Red Mage being as low as it is, like their whole design philosophy just doesn't make sense right now. I don't like the balance works, but it's not good. Like this tier's design is pretty much them admitting that. Like they didn't want another PAS incident, so what did they do? They made them mechanically intense rather than like DPS check intense, which is fine. Like I think that's a viable design choice, but it is admissible to the fact that game balance sucks right now. All of your damage is in 2 minutes. Your damage variance is massive based on whether you crit your big abilities or not. Like, there's more to it than job balance too. Like, classes don't have purpose. There is no reason for Samurai to do just infinitely more damage than, like, another complex job. Or, okay, I say complex. Like, there's no reason for, like, a pure DPS like Machinist to be doing so much less than, like, a Samurai. Like, Black Mage I understand more because it's much more complex to play properly. Samurai also has optimization in it. But if we're just looking at pure DPS alone, with Fizz ranged having no purpose anymore, because they're not having to, like, recover uptime where melee's lost it, like they would have done in Stormblood, for example. Like, why are melees and, like, a caster so much more damaging, like, to an extreme? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Crit is too good a start. Yeah, I mean, like, crit is just, like, crit in this game is just so stupid right now.
You don't need 2 melee DPS to clear content in Party Finder either. Everything is viable, as I said. But it is a bit of an issue.
I love the mention of that. Thank you.
Problems than it's actually solved. So again, in 7.0, I would love to see them actually revert this. Maybe throw in some 90-second and 180-second cooldowns back into the game. And it would also just make the game feel a lot more exciting. Like the 2-minute burst window is very boring. You have fun every 2 minutes, and after that, you're not having fun anymore until the next 2-minute cooldown. And they even put mechanics down into encounters that aren't that difficult by themselves, but because you're doing your 2-minute burst window during these mechanics, they are now...
Why did ley lines change to 120? Why do you think, man? We just talked about it.
Artificially more difficult because of that. I don't think this is exactly bad, but if they were to go back on the 2 minutes meta, then maybe these current encounters wouldn't age as well as they previously have. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think you need to just move forward and not worry too much about the past. But either way, that's just my 2 cents on that. There's another thing that I do want to mention about Endwalker that I think is somewhat of an issue, but I don't think it's a huge issue. And I think the raid tiers overall in Endwalker have been incredibly weak. I don't think these raid tiers have been that good, especially in comparison to Shadowbringers, where the raid tiers were excellent.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it's all relative. Like, Aspho was fun. This tier is pretty cool, generally. Abyssos was, like, the biggest turd I've ever seen. But, like, they can stand up on their own until you look back. Then suddenly, they are not so good.
Almost 10 out of 10s. Like, those fights were really good, really well designed, very unique, different mechanics, and all that kind of stuff. But I don't really want to focus too much on that. I want to focus more on the quantity versus quality and longevity of content. And that's my next point I'm going to move on to, is comparing Shadowbringers content to Endwalker content. Now, this might sound crazy, but for the most part, Shadowbringers has been more well-received than Endwalker. And I took a look at the content comparison from Endwalker to Shadowbringers, and it kind of blew me away, because the content comparison, Endwalker, outshines the amount of content that Shadowbringers had. If we look at Shadowbringers. It had one ultimate raid.
Worth noting that Stormblood had even more content. Like, once again, for example, we got Eureka and Deep Dungeon. In Shadowbringers, we got Bosnia. In Endwalker, we got Deep Dungeon. We're getting as much content in Endwalker as we were in Shadowbringers. Just with that example alone, and Shadowbringers was COVID hell. And yes, and now the game has only gotten more popular, and now we're not getting more content. Like, why? What the fuck is going on? Like what is happening here?
Okay. Endwalker, 2 ultimate raids. There is an issue with one of those ultimate raids.
Is this an Endwalker ultimate, though? They literally said it was 70% done.
But I'm going to say that for maybe another video. And let's go back to Shadowbringers now. We have all the standard stuff. You know, free Savage Raid tiers, dungeons, Blue Mage update, some niche content like Ishgardian Restoration and Ocean Fishing. But overall, not too much additional stuff. The additional thing that Shadowbringers brung to the table was a exploration zone, similar to Stormblood's Eureka, but we won't go into that. And that was the Bosnia Southern Front. Now, the Bosnia Southern Front was an area, a big...
Also, Shadowbringers, if I remember correctly, had 2 blue updates, not 1. Unless they do it in 6.5 as well, but I doubt
still can, by the way. Grind out relics, and it had its own separate progression system, which was complex, and it had a lot to it. But not too complex, it was still fairly easy. Regardless, this had a lot of content in it, and it had 2 raids in it. And one of these 2 raids had a Savage version. You didn't need to do the Savage version, it was just for a mount, but that was an option that you could do. Either way, it had 2 big raids to it, which were quite enjoyable. Now, if we go to Endwalker and compare the additional content, so 1 ultimate on Shadowbringers and the Bosnia Southern Front, compared to Endwalker, 2 ultimates, 3 Criterion dungeons, 1 deep dungeon, and Island Sanctuary. Now, Island Sanctuary, you might count that as niche content, but it's fairly accessible. Anyone can do Island Sanctuary. And then you have Ishgardian Restoration, which may be the comparison, but not everyone could do Ishgardian Restoration. You needed crafters leveled. Meanwhile, in Island Sanctuary, everyone could do it. So it's more accessible. So why, when we compare these 2, is Shadowbringers still revered as the better expansion? Well, for one, Endwalker isn't finished yet. That's a big thing. Endwalker isn't even finished yet. We still got 2 Criterion dungeons to go, and there is 1 coming out literally next week. The problem is longevity. That is the big issue here. Bosnia Southern Front provided a lot of longevity to it. There was a lot to do. You could just go in Bosnia Front, farm some...
The other problem... I will let him talk. I'll let him finish. But the other problem with Endwalker is that the content feels half-finished. They're just releasing shit half-finished all the time. Adventure Plates, beta test. Island Sanctuary, like, relatively bare bones when it came out. The Ishgard housing, full of fucking bugs. Like, even Top had several bugs in it. Like, things in Endwalker in general are coming out half-finished. Criterion was also an experiment, and now they've decided that they're just not going to flesh it out any further. Omega is a beetle. Shut the fuck up. Yeah, portraits, like what the fuck is that system? Like, Shadowbringers, at least, yeah, okay, content was delayed, but it came out finished. Like, the overall quality of content has been shit. Right, everyone expects bugs here and there, but it's been so much better up until now. Like, it just... And then they have, like, the goal to add quality of life and add, like, it's some, like, magical addition to the game. Even though they were literally just banning people for using quality of life and then adding it to the game themselves. Like, it's fucking crazy to me, man. Like, this company is so dog shit. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Madness to me. And now we're going to talk about longevity. And he's absolutely right.
Relics, farm the notes.
That's a good point. Even people don't even like the story of Endwalker, like at least post 6.0, because it's just like ramming fan service into the game.
For the lore to get achievements, farm the fates, farm the jewels, try and get the mounts. Like, there was a lot you could do in this content. Do the raids, do the savage raids. It was a lot. Meanwhile, Criterion is you kind of do it once and you're done. The Savage version is also a do it once and you're done. I don't exactly think that's a bad thing, but at least the normal mode Criterion, there needs to be some replayability there. There needs to be something. And I think something that they could do is add a weekly reward of gear or something like that. Something which makes you do it every week. Something that keeps you into the game getting new gear. And an alternative to gear would be amazing, I think. I think an alternative to gear would work really well. I don't know why they're so scared to add an alternative to gear. I'm not asking for Mythic Plus. I'm not asking for randomized stats or whatever Mythic Plus is on World of Warcraft. I'm not a big World of Warcraft player, so I'm not that educated in that matter. But for the most part, I'm just asking for maybe alternative right side, maybe a new set of accessories. Not
Gearing in this game is too boring for them to get adventurous with it. Unfortunately, like, it's just so strict and boring that it's just pointless. Like, what are they supposed to do with it? I do agree with more ways of gear acquisition by doing hard content. Like, where is my tome upgrades from Criterion, Yoshi P? Like where is that? Why don't we get that? Criterion's dead in a fucking week. There's not even any PFs for it. Because people don't fucking care unless they're farming for like the one mount you can get. They're not doing Savage over and over or anything. They're doing it once and then never again. Because it was just heinous and boring. Like, gearing in this game is a whole conversation in and of itself. But, like, yeah, the reason they don't is because they can't.
not even left side, just a new set of accessories. That's something like that.
They should be taking,
have it every week. Something like that.
I hate to say this, but they should be taking a leaf out of WoW's book here. I remember even back in Legion, going and opening that Mythic Plus chest every week for an extra piece of gear. Sure, I didn't always need it, but it was interesting.
Maybe rotate
WoW
bosses
RNG in general is like too much, I agree. But this game is the opposite problem.
At the end of the variant dungeon on a special path, which
like
you can
the
only
very
get in the
opposite
variant dungeon, and it doesn't actually make an appearance in the Criterion dungeon, at least in the last Criterion dungeon, which came out. And they could do something like that as well. They could spice up Criterion dungeons. They could add longevity to it. The problem is, will they? And that's why I wanted to make this video now rather than until next week. Because if I make it now, we can look back at this video and can be like, was I right or was I wrong? Did Criterion Dungeons redeem Endwalker and give it the longevity content that it needs, the
Very
content
much
to keep
doubt
you attached and playing the game and logging in, or did it not? And you can just go back to doing whatever else
easy to
you want
gear
to do.
cap.
Also, I was talking about gear and an extra right side in Criterion Dungeons, but while we're on the topic of gear, I do just want to add that it would be really nice if they did make gearing a little bit easier, because I think gearing is still kind of rough right now. It's still kind of bad. So if you're like me, maybe you do Party Finder, and you're really unlucky, so you have to rely on tokens to get all your gear. Okay, that's fine. The problem is the token system is still kind of bad. Like, it still requires a lot of tokens to get some of these pieces. Like, for example, the pants and body cost 6 tokens, and the weapon costs 8 tokens. That's 2 months of clearing the same fight. So, to me, that's a bit ridiculous. It shouldn't take you 8 weeks to get a weapon. I do really wish they would tone that down, and some people might call me crazy, but I think that should be 4 weeks minimum. I do not think it should be 8 weeks. I think that's insane. So If I had my way, I would personally change that. I would make it so weapons, body and pants cost 4 tokens, gloves, boots, and helmet cost 3 tokens, and accessories and upgrade materials cost 2 tokens. I think that would be a nice way to kind of round it out. And you could gear your main fairly quickly, at least in a minimum of 1 month if you've been clearing since week 1. And then you could get onto gearing alt jobs, because a lot of us like to...
I mean, like, that's not true, because, like, we have, like, 6 weeks of tomes, which is an issue that hasn't been addressed in the slightest. Like, I'll say it again. Like, the changes they've made to the gearing system on the raid side of things has always been a net positive. Everything guaranteed to drop once is good. All these book cost reductions, good. Spending last floor books to get previous floor items, extremely dumb, but it's an option. But it doesn't change how long it takes you to gear, because you're still farming the fucking tomes via very, very fucking mundane methods for like up to 6 weeks. And it's shit. Plus all the upgrades that drop still once from 2 floors. 1 from each. Like, it's dog shit still. And then there's like the more niche issues, like Gamer just said. Like, you want to gear alts, like, good fucking luck, man. Have fun farming several sets, weeks and weeks more of tomes. Like, gee, I wonder why I don't play many jobs in PF. It's almost as if by the time we get to that point where I just can't be fucking bothered. Like, it's just... For a game that advertises itself as play all the jobs, they sure don't make it easy to do that. Just buy crafted gear. No, people don't like playing in full crafted gear. People like to be able to pull their weight, push their limits. It just all feels bad. Like, Criterion Savage especially is a perfect opportunity to drop an upgrade for tome items. But they don't do it. And don't even get me started on the fact that to do Criterion Savage, having Biss is very ideal. And it comes out 8 weeks after the tier releases. 7 weeks actually now. Right? Or is it 8 still? Either way, if you haven't cleared week 1, good luck being fucking Biss by that time. Like... it's just... The logic is so backwards.
play alt jobs as well. A lot of us like to play other roles. Like, I like to play healer, as I mentioned, and gearing up my healer would be really cool. And then maybe moving on to melee DPS and gearing them up. Now, they do add augmenting crafted gear in a later patch, which is a nice change. I do like that they do that, but still, I'm just asking for, you know, best in slot so I can help groups out. You know, I can go as a fully geared savage healer and do something different. I don't really heal much, I tank mostly, and just help a prog group out or something like that would be fun. Just something that would, I think, add a little bit more longevity to the game in a way if gearing was a bit better. Another problem I have with gearing is a problem that's been an issue for a while now, but it only gets worse every expansion and they decide to add another melee to the game. And my problem is the sharing gear system. Now, I think tanks, healers, casters, and physical ranged are all fine. They all share gear, which is excellent. Thank goodness for that. But the problem is you have melee. Now, melee have 3 different sets of gear, and ninja also uses aiming right side. So, my issue with melee is if you want to play a melee, you have to collect 3 different gear sets. Or you can, of course, main a melee. If you mained a Dragoon, you could transfer your gear to Reaper, which is cool. If you mained Monk, you can transfer your gear to Samurai. That's cool. But the problem is Ninja doesn't have any other job to do that with. I don't think that's actually an issue, because I don't think they're going to add another melee in 7.0. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, but like, what if they did, though?
In 6.0.
How fucking awful would that be?
If anything, they might add a physical range that uses scouting gear. Who knows? Could happen. But I think I would prefer if they just stopped making scouting gear added dexterity to striking gear, and then just called it a day. Just make ninjas use striking gear. I mean, let's be honest.
Just turn it all to fucking strength, man. Like, why do we have dexterity still? Just make it all strength. I don't... Like, why do we need dexterity? I know it's, like, a product of a different time. I know that. But, like, why isn't it changed? Like, really?
Striking gear and scouting gear usually looks the same anyway, aesthetic-wise, so it really wouldn't make much of a difference. So that's my criticism for gearing as well. Not going to drag it out too much, I just thought I'd add that little 2 cents into this video.
Yeah,
that is my problem with Endwalker.
Or melee, or like physical jobs in general.
Things that I've talked about. Now, I do apologize if I've dragged on points. This is completely unscripted because, yeah, I don't really have time this week to make a fully fledged out video. But also, I did really want to make this video and just go over
you did good. You've hit a lot of big points.
Talk about it. Talk about these issues. So we're going to see. I overall have really enjoyed Endwalker. But yeah, there is problems that we need to go over. There is more issues that I have with it, like the top ultimate, but I'm not going to go into it now because this video seems to be dragging on a little bit and I don't want to drag out too much. And honestly, that could probably be its own separate video, so I'm not going to talk about it now. But yeah, who knows? Maybe the Blue Mage update is really good as well, and maybe Criterion Dungeon.
I mean, like, Blue Mage is gonna be, like, nice, but it's just gonna be Blue Mage. Like, it's not gonna be anything new. It should be fun. I'm looking forward to hopefully doing that next month. But it's not gonna bring anything new. It's just something that we've expected will come out at some point, and it's taken till 6.4 for that to happen.
Will save this expansion with a bit of hope, and I guess we'll find out next week. Anyway, that'll do it for this video. Do let me know in the comments below if you agree with me, disagree, or you have your own issues with Endwalker. Do let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video. So goodbye for now. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to my Patreons as always. I really appreciate you guys. And yeah, goodbye. Take it easy. Subscribe. Bye bye.
There's no saving Endwalker. We can only hope that 7.0 onwards is better. But that would involve them listening to us, and we all know what they're fucking allergic to doing. We all know what they're allergic to doing. So I'm gonna link this video. I think this is very good. He's listed a lot of the big points. This video has gotten some attention already. 20k views. That's a lot. Like, please subscribe, show him some love. He hangs out in chat every so often. We've raided him a few times when he streams. I also raided with him last tier in Abyssos. He's a really great guy. Big fan of Azurite. So please show him some love. Share the video and shit. And we're gonna get on to watching the